Imagine a Mario game where you are literally enslaved, fight terrifying interdimensional nightmare demons, witness a matter collapse apocalypse of an entire universe, and, oh, by the way, meet freaking God. That's Super Paper Mario, and my Grambi, is it an impressive spectacle of a Wii game. When I tell you that Super Paper Mario is the highest selling game in the Paper Mario franchise, you might think that it would be the most tame and accessible game. And I suppose there's some arguments for that being the case to be made. I mean, it being the game that changed the gameplay and combat style from a turn-based RPG into a side-scroller action RPG, more akin to the more popular mainline Super Mario 2D platformer series. But no, the game we got is so much more than that. Super Paper Mario is by all accounts a peak for the franchise in terms of storytelling, humor, characterization, gameplay mechanics, and overall direction. Where many who criticize the newer Paper Mario games that diverge from the traditional Mario RPG format cannot fault Super Paper Mario on is its story and ambitious design. Sure, maybe they prefer turn-based attacking, but no one can deny the quality and ingenuity of the adventure itself. And in fairness, Nintendo and Intelligent Systems were originally producing this for the GameCube, so they already wanted to differentiate the game from the already existing Thousand Year Door. And differentiate they did. Because, man, is this a weird one? Maybe still the weirdest. Many people have talked about this game, and they get some of the biggest reactions in terms of how funny and genuinely fascinating this game is to play through. And how deserving of these reactions Super Paper Mario is. It has achieved cult classic status as the one that diverged from the previous Mario RPG style, but before the franchise began to, shift in terms of gameplay direction quality. And to be honest, I didn't have too bad a time with Sticker Star, and I think since Color Splash and Origami King have also been steps upward in terms of quality. That being said though, nothing since or before Super Paper Mario was there any Mario game quite like it. It still stands out. Heck, it stands out amongst all Wii games or just Nintendo games in general. It's actually kinda staggering. Though, it's interesting since there's such a critical preference towards Paper Mario 1 and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door among more hardcore fans, Super Paper Mario still doesn't get the love I believe it rightfully deserves. And that extends beyond just its amazing story. Its unique mechanical design still creates a wonderful experience. The game is a genius unfolding of the Mario universe and the logic of video games as a whole. While the adventure starts off normally, like previous Paper Mario games, things quite quickly become anything but. The mysterious Count Bleck has somehow got both Princess Peach and Bowser ready to be married, and things kinda get going from there in terms of evil plans and bizarre circumstance. We quickly find out that Count Bleck is amassing a plan to go far beyond even the worst plans of Bowser. He wants to use the Chaos Heart to literally destroy all known reality, to erase the Mario multiverse. Bleck cites that it's all part of a foretold plan in the Dark Prognosticus, an ancient book of prophecies. From there, Mario gets separated from Peach, Luigi, and seemingly the world he knows and calls home, and meets Tippy, a pixel, who helps get Mario started back on his journey to stop Bleck, his minions, and save every known world. While Tippy isn't the only pixel Mario will ally himself with in the game, you'll find her importance grows more as the story goes on. From there, it's mostly a 2D action platformer with some RPG elements like the ability to level up, grow stats, use items stored in an inventory, and much more. I say mostly 2D since there is a core main mechanic of the game that literally changes the game to a 3-dimensional Z-axis, and it's called, well, I mean, it's kind of obvious, it's called flipping. Flipping is incredibly essential to the experience, and progressing forward at most points in the story will often require this mechanic to be used. Once you realize how important flipping is, it's quite easy to see why the dynamic change in gameplay style was made to be more streamlined and basic. You don't just jump on enemies either. With the help of more pixels, Mario and his party members can attack in many different ways. Ground pounds, the hammer, a spiky shield. As one advances further into the campaign, more abilities open up to Mario. And of course there's other party members as well. And like previous Mario RPG titles, they include Princess Peach and Bowser, whom both possess different abilities. Again, abilities that need to be utilized to progress. While Peach and Bowser can't flip, they have their own unique moves that aid them, like Peach's floating parasol and Bowser's heavy attacking fire breath. So even though Mario is still very much our main character with the most dominant ability, other characters are still very much necessary to proceed. Interestingly enough, TP's main ability uses the pointing feature of the Wii Remote, where you can look for hidden objects and/or analyze things. Kinda like Goombella from the Thousand Year Door, or Goombario from Paper Mario 64. In general, despite being a Wii game, there aren't too many motion control mechanics shoved onto the player. They are there, but they're minor. Most of the game is controlled with the Wii Remote sideways, like an NES controller, and it works pretty well all things considered. Again, making both tasteful use of the Wii's relatively new motion control mechanics, as well as traditional controls that work well for a 2D platformer. In many ways, the game loves to play with the classic aesthetics of Super Mario, featuring plenty of 8-bit sprites and overly pixelated environments. Again, trying to connect more to that 2D platforming past rather than attempt to evoke a storybook-style tale like the previous Paper Mario games. But beyond that, the art style of having objects that can exist in both 2D and 3D is featured as well, causing many bizarrely isometric enemy designs to litter the game. Some are really fascinating to look at, while others are simply horrifying. Speaking of horrifying, this game, yeah, it goes places. Creepy enemies aren't even nearly the half of it. Mario and friends bear witness to some pretty disturbing moments that are surprising for what's supposed to be a game that's friendly for kids. Oh, like, I don't know, watching in horror as a universe collapses and the people of said universe are helpless to stop it and very aware of what's going on. Genuinely terrifying. Or how about the fights against Mimi, where she does well, yeah. Maybe we could note when Mario and Luigi both freaking die and go to hell. Yeah, that that actually happens. Sure, it's called the underwear, and it's not quite as serious as falling into the 7 circles of the inferno, but still, Mario freaking dies. Not only that, but in heaven, or as it's called in the game, the over there, you wake up a sleeping Princess Peach, who was the only one of the squad to make it into heaven, by the way. You wake up a sleeping Princess Peach with basically a fruit of knowledge. What original sin-esque imagery is this game playing with? Like, I'm surprised a mob of crazy conservative Christian mothers didn't storm Nintendo HQ once this game came out. But yeah, then Mario meets God. Yep. His name is Grambi, and the characters are surprisingly chill for the occasion of meeting the Mario universe equivalent of Zeus or Yahweh. It is both amazing while also super strange for how casual and relaxed the cast of characters are for people who are witnessing heat deaths of the universe, creepy monsters, and yes, the afterlife. Even for characters who, in fairness, have dealt with some crazy things before, this is a remarkably existential situation to be so chill about. The story where you meet Grambi is particularly interesting too, because you also meet an analog for Jesus, or the offspring of God, who is basically in this game a whiny teenager. But man, it's not all laughs. This game really does have an emotional core. And I can't forget to mention that the ruler of the underwear is also an analog for Grambi's wife, or Yahweh's wife, which some scholars suggest was at some point thought to be Asherah, though this interpretation seems to be more based on the figure of Lilith. There's many ways to interpret Lovebee's journey, like them embodying the will of humanity to reject the nature bestowed upon them by higher powers, but ultimately it sticks with that Jesus-esque metaphor with being the ultimate sacrifice. It also helps reconcile our Lilith and Yahweh metaphor characters, who are, by the way, creating a war between angels and demons. Again, the imagery here is bold. Either way, you know, why is a Mario game doing all of this? It goes to show the light-hearted nature of the Mario game, sure, but it also goes to show how ambitious the developers wanted to really go with this one. They didn't care how dark or twisted they got with Super Paper Mario, and the game is all the better for it. Did it guarantee many children having nightmares about Mimi? Sure, but it was worth it for the atmosphere, I am totally confident about. Speaking of that level, by the way, Mario gets straight up conned into indentured servitude, and you, the player, literally have to jump and hit a block a certain amount of times to proceed, like the other slaves are doing. And throughout this stage, and among other points in the game, the player is put in interesting positions from a gameplay perspective. Some sections you're basically forced to walk aimlessly forward or jump many times to be able to figure out the passwords to escape. There's also the levels with the Kregnons, these caveman-esque characters that exist and are observed by, well, rather less than benevolent documentarians. And as it happens, things are not as they appear in that context either, with again a more subversions of expectations as to who controls what and why. The game is constantly calling into question your direct agency as the player. They directly refer to the player, talk about how death is a game over, and so on. It basically takes Super Paper Mario to the most meta levels of self-awareness and overall philosophical messaging. After all, how much control does any one player have? Are they not affixed and guided by the wills of the game's developers? Almost always. I mean, really, sure, you can move around, but you're playing in someone else's code. Mario himself has very little control over the world he inhabits and simply just wants to help. He just wants to make things right. And this fate for Mario is cosmically predetermined. Mario has and always will be an avatar for players to use to resolve the conflict of the game's world. Considering that you, the player, are directly referred to in this game, and death is often called a quote-unquote game over, one has to consider that this game is making larger statements about the nature of video games as a whole. No, it's not just suggesting that video game software is full of real characters who live and die with every shutting off of your console. That would be way too literal and really not true. I mean, it's just ones and zeros after all. Instead, I believe Super Paper Mario is making players recognize the unique responsibility humans have in creating a better, loving world, no matter how controlled and predetermined things may initially seem.
Oh yeah.
Take Blumiere and Timpani. separated by forces beyond themselves, leading to each becoming different forces, with one trying to destroy the multiverse in revenge for their lack of control over their narratives. Yes, at a certain point, one must recognize that they can't control everything. Even the all-powerful player is bound by the constraints of the software developers who create the game they are playing. But to relinquish oneself to being fully controlled by their inhibitions and reactionary thoughts is dangerous, and what leads to, in a sense, certain destruction. Mario, always doing what's right, despite the world around him constantly being horrifying, negative, and twisted, is what helps create the conditions for those horrifying, negative, and twisted situations to be resolved. If players give up on the game, the villains seemingly win. The universe is destroyed, left to nothingness. But if they persevere, a resolution can be found, and peace that was once thought lost can be rekindled, like Bleck and Tippy becoming Blumiere and Timpani once more. It is this continuous pushing forward, even when God, or a Grambi, has seemingly lost all hope. That is what Super Paper Mario encourages, despite even the bleakest and most seemingly unending times of terror. Because if you, the player, the controller of Mario, the avatar of change, give up, who will save the multiverse? Who will resolve the conflict that needs resolving? It is ultimately up to us, before we each inevitably meet our eventual game over, to make the changes we must in our lives, in order to make the lives of others that we care about, and the greater universe as a whole, hopefully, a better place. It's about love, it's about caring, and it's about the determination to stick through the very worst to eventually see the good. And what's more important than a game that cultivates our desire for that very agency to make our lives and the lives of those around us better, even when all hope is seemingly lost? It's what makes this game far beyond just a strange Paper Mario game, and something deeply, tremendously special. And also, isn't Dementio just a really great character? Can we get him in like a Mario Kart or a Mario Party or something? Seriously.